It was disappointing that the response from Qatar was totally devoid of any substance and was a denial of taking any steps or measures that would respond to the legitimate requests of the four countries.
What are the options? What happens next?
Well, we will consider and deliberate and decide on further measures that would encourage the Qatari government to change its policy in terms of supporting terrorists, harboring terrorist persons on its territory, continuing to provide arms to radical organizations, and we believe that this is in conformity with the international coalition against Daesh and against ISIL.
The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs here in the UAE tweeted this morning. Next, greater isolation, incremental measures and reputational damage stemming from Doha's continued support for extremism and terrorism. He said for any real discussion with Doha to gain traction, it has to be responsible for past actions and recognize the necessity of changing course. Qatar can't miss the bus, he said. What did he mean by that?
Qatar needs to show through policies, through measures that it is relinquishing previous practices of support of radicalism and terrorist organizations, and the interjection in the internal affairs of the states in the region. And we see the level of damage, the level of human suffering that has been associated to interventions by Qatar in Syria, in Libya, and the heavy price that Egypt has to pay in the loss of life, civilian life, and that of its military and police force, women and children, the last instance being the tragic events of the Egyptian Christians on their way to the monastery for prayers that were targeted so brutally by terrorist organizations. The terrorist organizations, wherever they operate, are one unit and one supporting entities, and any form of support to them at any level is a direct affront to our security and that of our citizens.
Foreign Minister, are you accusing the Qataris of being involved in that attack?
We are accusing the Qataris of supporting radical organizations and terrorist organizations, and we've always indicated that a true response to terrorism must be comprehensive. We cannot deal with one organization and neglect the other, that all of these organizations are reinforcing to each other, and we have seen and have monitored and have evidence related to the activities and the cooperation that exists between various organizations operating both in the Middle East and in Africa and in Europe.
Is the group accusing them of supporting extremism and terrorism, the group that you belong to, prepared to share that intelligence with the Qataris and with the rest of the world?
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, and this is the case with most states, among them the United States of America, when issues related to intelligence and to sources are dealt with within appropriate channels and are dealt with great sensitivity to protect sources and to protect the information and its collection process. We only have one motivation, and that is for Qatar to change course and to desist from the destabilizing activity it has been perpetrating over the last 10 to 20 years.
President Trump spoke with the Egyptian president on Tuesday and called on all parties to negotiate constructively to resolve this dispute. The sort of language coming out from both sides sounds, with respect, anything but constructive at this point. What role the Americans in helping mediate this?
Well, we are, of course, in close contact with the United States of America. President Trump's indications during his participation in the American Arab Islamic Summit in Riyadh, and in our direct communications with the President and his administration, has always led us to rely on the President's firm commitment to eradicating terrorism and radicalism from the world, and in doing so through very constructive and definite measures. And yesterday's conversation reiterated that same policy, and we look forward to continuing to cooperate closely with the United States and our other international partners to the full eradication of terrorism.
On the demands from the quartet to shut down Al Jazeera, the Qatari FM told CNN there's not a chance AJ will be shut down. He said out of the question. Supported by the UN Special Rapporteur, of course, for freedom of expression and opinion, who said the move would be a blow against media pluralism in the Middle East. This is an organisation that, quite frankly, Egypt has a checkered history with. Is this still a demand? And do you aspire to see a free and healthy press across the Middle East?
So I would think that you would be more attuned to the fact that all freedom of expression is somehow guided by certain moral principles which have to be applied, that there are restrictions, there are areas like pedophilia, like other issues that are not provided the opportunity to air and to be constantly. Neither should there be any tolerance for hate and agitation and the projection of terrorists and terrorist activities in any manner that creates sympathy for these organizations or for this ideology. If we are true to our determination to eradicate terrorism, we must eradicate the ideology that is unfortunately on many occasions and in a sublime manner being projected by media outlets in Qatar. So I think we all know how that broadcast organization has been taking advantage of its outreach and how it has been projecting and glorifying terrorist activities. Most recently, they aired a piece about snipers shooting Egyptian soldiers at their posts, guarding their posts. I wonder whether that is not a glorification of activities that I think should be deplored.
So when you hear the Qatari FM in a speech at Chatham House on Tuesday say the following: above all, and unlike many states in the Middle East, Qatar was not built on oppression, fear and censorship, you say what?
Well, I would refer you to whether there have been any elections in Qatar, whether the leadership of Qatar is elected, whether there are elected institutions of governance, as is in Egypt and in other countries. I believe we have to be realistic when we discuss issues of this and not try to project a false sense of the status quo.